Who is Denise Quinlan? Was being an entrepreneur, running your own business, always something that you wanted to do? Are you ready to answer some rapid fire questions? Welcome to the JOD Pod, a micro podcast where we interview CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, authors, and coaches. Today we are joined by Denise Quinlan, founder of Insightful Images. Great to have you with us today, Denise.
A pleasure to be here, James. A total delight.
Total delight. That's a lovely sentiment, and it is wonderful to have you on the JOD Pod. For those of us who don't know Denise, who is Denise Quinlan? What do you do?
Denise, what do I do? Oh my goodness. Right. So I'm a USP hunter and marketing messaging specialist with a visual twist. So I particularly work with business leaders and business owners, typically small businesses less than 10 employees, who are fantastic at what they do, but realize the need to articulate more clearly the impact they bring to the people they're trying to reach in order to, grow their profile, presence, and obviously get great clients. And also that includes people who are struggling to sell themselves, essentially.
Wonderful. I love everything you're doing there. I wish more people could, step out of that comfort zone of, not talking about themselves and not branding themselves and do a better job of that. So I love the journey, the mission that you're on there, Denise. How long have you been doing that kind of work as running your own business and helping people on that journey?
Thanks, James. I guess it's probably 6 years for my own business. I guess my
Mm-hmm.
skills were crafted in the good old corporate world of business development, marketing, and sales roles. But yeah, just 6 years as Insightful Images.
Awesome. And was that was being an entrepreneur, running your own business, always something that you wanted to do?
It wasn't an ambition. It's really interesting. When I was working in the corporate world, one of my roles was in kind of partner management, so alliances, working with big cheese organizations. So I was working for
Mhm.
Oracle, a large organization, corporate organization, and I was partnering with other large organizations. And I kind of moved towards working with the channel resellers because I just found it more dynamic and entrepreneurial. So in hindsight, I look back and see that path, but at the time it wasn't something I was aiming for. And then when I reflected further, as I decided to start my own business and get into it, was my father was an entrepreneur. So it's kind of like, it wasn't consciously, but I think subconsciously the kind of path was there, but I wasn't aware of it. So it's probably it's not surprising when I look back, but it wasn't an ambition to be an entrepreneur necessarily.
That's interesting because some people think about being an entrepreneur, from selling lemon
From day
water on the
one.
side of,
Yeah.
their house or
Yeah.
orange juice and things like that. But some people just kind of move into it because it's a kind of natural progression of where their career has taken them, and maybe there was some attributes that you're already demonstrating. Obviously, there was if you were doing channel sales at Oracle. It's a very entrepreneurial kind of organization, and it just kind of makes sense that that's a next step. Do you remember when you actually started your own business and you got your first customer? How you got your first customer?
My first customer, not unsurprisingly, was a contact, so a former colleague from my corporate world. As is often the case, isn't it? You start off with kind of friends, family, which is obviously a good place to start. Yeah, so yes, I think I was quite terrified, really. Yes, but it was a great learning experience, and they were patient and yeah, I'm probably doing myself a disservice, really, but it was great working with somebody I knew, but obviously that's also terrifying as well in some ways, that because um, they see everything. But it was a great experience. So 6 years ago, so I've worked with that client almost 5 times now, every year, every other year. So it's good to look back and see the history of the work that I've done with them as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, it was great fun working with them.
I think it's important for anybody that's looking to start a business is thinking, hearing other people about where they get their first customer. You don't need to go and create a massive marketing campaign to get your first customer. It can be just someone that that is actually willing to invest in you.
Yeah,
As you starting something out, and and it's great that that you worked with them so often over the last 6 years. Thanks for sharing that. That's really really big. So, what are you working on now, Denise? What's the projects that you're pushing?
um, I'm working with. There's probably four key things that I'm working on at the moment. So from a messaging, the messaging I'm talking about, so it's either as an individual or as a business. So for individuals, it's about how they're showing up. So typically that would be their written LinkedIn profile, as well as their images. So there's getting them to show up in the world as they truly should, reaching their target audiences. But there's also working with small businesses. So I'm working with two small comms tech companies, again finding their sweet spot clients, and making sure the messaging is about, is the messaging their target clients would use. Not, we often go back to that default tech language, our own industry speak, not necessarily customer language. So that's something I'm working on, two different clients project on their messaging. But I'm also very particular project I'm working on is working with Society of Garden Designers. So working with garden designers, and I state garden designers as in interior designers for your garden, who, exactly as you said there, James, they've got their qualification, they're newly qualified, got their business, they've got a website potentially, and they're working out how to get themselves out there. So absolutely what you're saying about starting with people is exactly where most of them are starting. So so working with them on their messaging and their marketing activity to get themselves out there. So that's a great fun project to be working. So I deliver once a month workshops to these garden designers as part of the Society of Garden Design, which is the largest and only professional garden design body in the UK. So it's great fun working with them. So there's a number of different projects there, probably four key
There's
areas.
lots.
Really.
There's lots. I love what you're doing there with garden designers, because I think, particularly now, most of us are probably spending a lot more time in our gardens than we've ever done before, because the south of France and Spain has been taken away from us due to the virus. So I'm guessing a lot of people are spending money on their gardens, and actually people that can go out there and properly design them in the right kind of way. They're going to be specialists at what they do there, but they might not be able to actually share that expertise or share that messaging about what they can do for people in the right kind of way. So working with someone like you that can help them deliver that message to their ideal client and find their ideal client, I think is going to be absolutely imperative for those kind of people that are starting that kind of business.
Yeah, absolutely. There's it's fun watching them because this is the whole thing, isn't it? From USPs for unique selling propositions, everybody's got something different to offer, and what I love doing is finding those differences and bringing those out for them, such that things. I mean, sometimes it's something that I always say that it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. We don't necessarily see those gems because we've lived them, we've read them. We don't see them as being different to what the next person can offer. But that's those gems are the fun things I like digging out and presenting on the cushion and going, this is what your customers would absolutely love if only they knew about it. But sometimes it can be something really simple around the customer service as well. That again, we get very familiar with what we offer, and we forget that our target clients don't know about it, and they're not mind readers, so how are they going to know? And there's so much noise, so much exponential amount of content around, as you know yourself, your specialist area. So it is really cutting through that. So those gems are fantastic to find, to help individuals or businesses differentiate themselves from the next few thousand that there are going to be out there. So it's great fun working, and they're incredibly responsive. Actually, they'll make a change almost straight following the workshops that we do, which is kind of like, wow, I've never had that amount of quick response from individuals.
It's so wonderful working with people that like actually react really fast on a feedback loop, that you give them some advice to do and they follow up on it, which I think is an important thing to think about in business, is actually sometimes how fast you can run at something that makes the difference. Don't worry about perfect. Just iterate.
Absolutely.
Do you deliver you deliver the monthly trainings for the interior, external garden designers?
Garden designers. Yeah.
Is that your preferred method of kind of sharing the processes through kind of live workshops and masterclasses?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. With the garden designers, we have like 20 maximum on Zoom, which works really well, very interactive. But I offer the services on a one-to-one basis as well. So it really does depend, whether it's So if we've got people I work with who are looking for new jobs, for example, so that's definitely one-to-one. Business positioning, non-exec directors, one-to-one type work. Obviously, when I'm working with smaller business, it can involve members of their team, members of the company. But yes, there's the individual kind of tailored specific work, and then there's the kind of one-to-many. So you're giving the general outline and suggestions, recommendations, and education, if you like. And then some of the garden designers, for example, are keen to invest further and get up to speed quicker. So I do one-on-one sessions with them in a mentoring, coaching type role. So yes, there's a
wonderful. Well, we'll certainly drop some links below for those events that you're running, those online events, so people can come along and engage with those, and then they can maybe follow up more with you one-to-one. Are you ready to answer some rapid fire questions?
Go on then.
What's your favourite app or SaaS product that you're using every day?
Do you know, I guess typical app I use, is literally something like LinkedIn or Instagram is what I use. Not very exciting, I'm afraid.
No, it can be exciting. Why do you like using LinkedIn so much?
It's it's a vehicle is the word I'm trying to avoid saying. It's connects me to the people where my influencers and target audience hang out, essentially. So it's a great place to be from that point of view. And similarly with Instagram, really, that's Yeah, I
bet garden designers are all over Instagram. Well, they should be.
Absolutely,
they should be. Yeah,
and they are.
What's your most recommended book?
Well, it's called The Well-Gardened Mind. So by Stuart Smith, I should say. She's actually a psychologist and psychiatrist, has a celebrated garden designer husband, but it's all about well-being. It's all about mental health and well-being, essentially, and how outdoor space is vital for our well-being and balance in life. So it's a great book. I'd recommend it thoroughly. So can I give you a stat? So
go for it.
Well-being, the Royal Horticultural Society did a study that came out end of last year that showed just by having a handful of plants in a front garden area is over 6 months is the equivalent to something like 8 mindfulness sessions. So just to give you a sense, so greenery is really important to bring down our cortisol, the stress hormone. There you go.
I'm just looking around me. I've got no green in here. Oh, actually, I do have this, but I don't know if that counts.
Is that an aloe vera plant by the looks of it? Is it real?
But it's plastic. It's plastic.
I was going to say.
It's plastic.
Real greenery. The brain knows it's not real. So putting yourself in a park or a garden is going to be more beneficial, I would suggest.
I will take your advisement on, and I will try and get some green in here. I'm opposite of
Or
green
just put
fingers here,
yourself,
though.
or just go put yourself out in the garden if you've got one, or in a local park, or where there's some greenery. That's the key thing. Just having some of that a day is good for, brings the stress hormones down. Top
Wonderful.
tip. There you go. Who knew?
Top tip. We'll repurpose that into something wonderful. Who's your who's your favorite YouTuber or podcaster, Denise?
Do you know, this is really interesting. I feel quite old-fashioned in that. I listen to the radio loads. Okay, so I also get a publication called The Week. I don't know. It's like a weekly digest of what's happening in the UK and the world, and they have a kind of every week they have a recommended podcast. So I'll have a look and see if there's anything interesting. I'll occasionally dip into it, but I will play back programs from like Radio 6 music, or some of the Radio 4 programs, sometimes the comedy. So you trying to say business wise as opposed to entertainment and kind of enjoyment wise?
No, it's fine. Like, it's fine if
Good.
if that's what you used for entertainment and to educate, that's fine. Like Radio 4 have got some incredible shows on there, so that's great. Like most people, go for the standard, Apple Podcast stuff, but that's some great recommendations there. Maybe we can link to some of the ones that you listen to.
One other one I would say is, which I'm following, because I'm doing a 30-day challenge in June, which is 20 minutes of exercise every day in June. And a lady called Bianca Sainty is doing that. So she repurposes some content of her own content. So I'm probably watching more of her YouTube videos, which kind of exercise related, essentially, about posture, sitting at the desk, as well as kind of workout stuff. So she's probably one of my more frequented
podcasters. That's great. I've not heard of Bianca Sainty, but I'll
check her out.
We'll link up, and people might be interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who do you think is an up and comer? Who's the next Elon Musk or Denise Coates, the CEO of Bet365?
Do you know? I think Anne Boden. I was thinking, for Starling's Bank, I was probably going to be up there, but I'm a bit of a anti-celebrity person. I like the small, the person who's not yet, yes, this is somebody who's not yet known.
The reason I mentioned Musk is one of his big things is for us to become an interplanetary species, and I think for the rest of us, it's like, oh yeah, great. Well, if you can do that, that will protect us as a species going forwards. And I love what you're doing with electric cars, and entrepreneurially doing absolutely fantastically well. And I think that does benefit mankind. But I think if you were close to that as a worker, as an employee, I think it burns so brightly, you would just be worn down as a human being. And that's what I mean. It's like, can you actually succeed in all of those different areas all at the same time? I think it might be quite challenging, and I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. Is, can I be a nice entrepreneur and achieve my goals? And I think it's an interesting dynamic. Denise, that's been wonderful. Where can people find you online? What's the best place for people to interact with?
LinkedIn is probably a very good place. So I'm literally Denise Quinlan. You should find me there on LinkedIn or Instagram, or my website, insightfulimages.co. So probably those are the key places to find me, really.
Wonderful. There we have it. Denise Quinlan, the founder of Insightful Images, where she helps business leaders show up in the world, a USP hunter and messaging specialist with a visual twist. Managed to get her first customer through an existing corporate contact, which she continued working with 6 years later, which is a fantastic example for anybody that's looking to start their own entrepreneurial endeavors. Look at the people that you already know. Denise's favorite app is LinkedIn, and her most recommended book is The Well-Gardened Mind by Sue Stuart Smith. No podcast recommendations specifically, but loves listening to the Radio 6 Music and Radio 4, and recently been watching Bianca Sainty. Bianca Sainty?
Bianca Sainty, but yeah.
Sainty.
Sainty. No, yeah, it's
Sainty.
You're very close.
On the YouTube, so for her exercising 20 minutes a day, every day in June. She thinks we should be keeping an eye on and Bowden, the CEO, founder of Starling Bank. And you can find out more about Denise and Denise's masterclasses by connecting directly with Denise on LinkedIn. Just search for Denise Quinlan and I'm sure you'll find her. Denise, thank you so much for joining us today on the JOD Pod.
A total pleasure. Thank you very much, James.
And thank you for joining us for today's interview with Denise on the JOD Pod. To ensure you don't miss out on any of these interviews, any of these episodes, make sure that you play the YouTube game, that you subscribe, you give us a tick, a thumbs up, and you hit the bell so you know when these new episodes are launched. And also, to help out this episode, ask Denise a question about branding, about showing up, about finding your USP. A lot of people struggle with this. Throw a question in the comments below, and I'm pretty much guaranteed Denise will answer every single one of them. And if you want to ask me a question, feel free to do that as well. Hopefully you've been inspired by what Denise has been talking about today, and that you can go out yourself and build something, inspire the next generation. That's what this is all about. Thank you for joining us today on the JOD Pod. If you enjoyed this interview, why don't you check out some of these other interviews that we've done on the JOD Pod. More inspirational CEOs, coaches, entrepreneurs, founders, and authors. I'm sure there's something here that will inspire you to build something new.